everybody, and welcome to On the Flank, episode number 21. I am one of your hosts, John George, alongside Joe Kirkpatrick. Say hello, Joe.
Hey, everybody.
And Joe, today's a very special episode because on a normal episode, for the first time, we have a guest with us, and it is Florida Mayhem side streamer AnneDro. Say hello, Anne.
Hello.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining us. I'm excited. We tweeted out beginning of 2019 that our goal was to have more guests on this podcast, and we are starting out strong, 2 episodes into 2019. So thank you so much for joining us, AnneDro, to get our goals started already.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So to switch up the format of the show this week, we're going to start out by just asking Anne some questions, and then we'll get into the normal show with Anne. You guys both ready for that?
For sure.
All right.
Should be a good one, I think.
Yeah, hopefully. So Anne, first, or Joe, you have the first question, actually. Go ahead, Joe.
Yeah, so I guess, for those of our listeners who don't know, we might as well just start, I guess, having you introduce yourself. Who are you? What do you do in Overwatch? How might they know you, or how can they find you?
Yeah, so my name is AnneDro. I am a Twitch streamer, a Twitch partner, and I am signed with Florida Mayhem as their streamer representative for Twitch. And you can find me on Twitch at AnneDro, or on my other handles like Instagram, YouTube, and Twitter with AnneDro Media. And I'm like a 4500 tank main, but I also flex onto other roles at around like a GM to 4.2 level. Like I can play DPS at 4.2 and still do things and not feed, and which is kind of nice as a player. But yeah, so I'm on East Coast, so not a lot of people know about me from West or EU yet, which is getting there.
Yeah,
I've thought about VPNing to West and getting some exposure. So
Yeah. So as a Florida Mayhem streamer, so they've signed you. Like, is that what's your role, sort of, as a streamer for like the larger organization? Like, are there benefits for you from them, or vice versa, or how does that work?
Oh, absolutely. I think there's benefits on both sides. Absolutely. Like a professional organization signing a streamer is such a good thing, like overall for the organization, for the streamer, for the community. And it's helpful for the streamer, because you get sponsored by a professional org that says, hey, you can have anything that you need to be successful in your industry. What do you need? Do you need a new computer? Do you need like a new camera? Do you need, this and that? And it's basically like helping streamers who might not make a lot of money, helping them thrive and giving them equipment and sponsoring them that way. And it's also giving them huge amounts of exposure. Like, I only had about 2K Twitter follows before I got signed. And basically, like, as I got announced, I got 100 followers like every night for about a week until I got up to like 3K in a week. And it's kind of crazy to me, because it's like, before then it was maybe like I got like 1 or 2 follows like every day, but then like getting 100 followers every day, and the amount of exposure is just like insane as like a streamer. And it benefits the company, the organization, because it's like a streamer representative on the platform of Twitch, which is only getting more popular by the day. And I honestly believe that if every pro org sponsored streamers, that the community would be like thriving a ton, and that like Twitch would be thriving, honestly.
yeah.
And it's really like up to the professional orgs, because Blizzard has been kind of like silent about streaming. They just recently built a new streaming like desk that they've been bringing streamers to. But I mean, this is like only happening like within the past couple months. Like they've been kind of silent on streamers, and so I think it's good that professional orgs are starting to like take over the role that Blizzard should have, which is, support streamers, because streamers literally run the community. And like, if there's somebody who plays a game every day, they're going to watch streamers because like it's literally direct access to education and oftentimes entertainment. So
Yeah.
and that's how it benefits the community essentially, is because it's like it's literally making streaming better quality, which then makes the community better quality, because like they're not sponsoring like toxic streamers, they're sponsoring like streamers who are like small time, good PMA, etc. And they're giving them like boosts and exposure with the already established fan base that they have.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. So how much interaction do you have with Florida Mayhem themselves? I see that they retweet your stuff, they tweet out your stream every once in a while. Are they required to do that a certain amount of times, or do they just throw it out there every once in a while? How often do you interact with them exactly?
It's definitely kind of like a lax interaction. I mean, I'm like friends with them, honestly. Like I just contact them and occasionally and say, hey, what's up? Um, and they come and watch my stream occasionally and say, hey, what's up? It's not really like super businessy. I don't feel like it's very casual. Like they just kind of tweet whatever clips they want. I don't really send them clips. It's always funny when I'm like, oh wow, this is like a 2-month old clip that they just tweeted, but
Wow.
it's like what it's like, it helps, honestly. Like every clip they tweet, I just get a ton of exposure for basically nothing, and it's honestly super helpful. So
Yeah, I've been writing like a chapter for a book, a section on Overwatch League, and I think the best thing that Blizzard's sort of done is getting these franchises with are sort of creating a league with people with lots of money willing to invest lots of money, and like the Florida Mayhem, now they're able to sort of give back that money to players and streamers, and give them enough support, because like you're saying, I don't think Blizzard wants to use that money themselves. They want to use it themselves to create a good league or a good game itself, but they want these franchises to mostly give their money back to the players and streamers, is what I've noticed.
hmm
So, so I guess sort of several parts here, but so did you start getting into streaming Overwatch before I assume probably before you joined up with Florida? How did you get into to stream it on Twitch? But then how did this connection with Florida come in also?
I started streaming on Twitch as basically a hobby. I mean, I've been playing video games for quite a while. I started playing like Counter-Strike as a kid, and like Gary's Mod I had like almost 2,000 hours on. So I was definitely a gamer as a kid, and it was something I loved, and it was something my parents didn't support. And so I never really like thought about like how I could make money from this, but um I just started streaming because I like really liked playing video games, but I felt like whenever I played Overwatch, I felt alone because I was high elo, if that makes sense. Like all my friends would be like gold and I'd be like high master or low GM.
Yeah.
And as a player, it's like I just get really freaking lonely. Like the point of playing video games for me was like, hey, I can play with all my friends for like hours and we can just like talk to each other. And so when I started streaming and I found like a couple friends, like I literally only had like 3 people watch my stream. And if they didn't watch my stream, I was really sad at like the whole stream because I'm like, oh, nobody showed up. And that happened for like probably 3 months. And I think really what got me like multiple viewers to actually come and watch me was I was playing like in a low GM game, and there was a streamer who was already established. They had 300 people in their stream. And I was basically just like memeing around in voice chat, and they found me really entertaining and decided to invite me to the stack, and like we queued and became friends. And that's when I jumped viewership by like, I was no longer at 0 people, I was at 20, you know. And
Wow.
20 is like a pretty good amount to climb from like 0 viewers. So I suddenly just had 20 people all in my stream all the time just because I literally met another streamer. So that's kind of like really how it happens. And from there, building the 20 to like a 40 is just a matter of persistence of streaming.
Wow, that's awesome.
And second part of the question, it's like no simpler than Florida Mayhem just watched my stream for like a couple weeks and found my attitude, my community, and my gameplay very appealing. So they contacted me through Twitter DM, just being like, "Hey, do you want to join our team?" And I'm like, "Fuck yeah, dude."
So you don't go looking for them; they'll find you.
Absolutely, yeah. I think it's hard to look for a team because if you go up to a team and ask them, chances are they probably will say no. I mean, it's probably not bad that you're asking because you don't get anything in life without asking for it most of the time, but I think the number one step if you want to get signed is like literally just care about your community and like your stream like it's your job and like it's your life, because that's what they want. Like they want full-time streamers who have dedication and passion for what they're doing, and that was like the one thing they told me they really admired.
Yeah, that's great. So is streaming, you clearly love it. Is it your ideal Overwatch job? Do you want to eventually be competing in Contenders Overwatch League, stuff like that?
I talk about this on stream, but so far I've probably like I don't really want to go down the Contenders route, and I've been offered tryouts for OWL teams, but I denied them just because I said, hey, I'm like a full-time streamer, like this would really cut into it. I don't really want to go pro, and I'm still like in that kind of mindset. I think when I was a nobody streamer, when I only had 0 people, that was like my goal. I was like, hey, I'm gonna grind to 4,600 and get on a team and be like a competitor and be like super role model-y for, you know, LGBT people. And I think I gave up somewhere along the way just because I see like all the people retiring from Overwatch League and from Contenders, and they're literally like moving over to streaming as like their number one thing. And they're talking about like how streaming is so good, and I'm like, as a streamer, like doing good as a streamer, and it's like, hey, don't you want to go to Contenders and like lose everything you've like made? And it's like, maybe another time I'll think about it.
Maybe tomorrow.
But it's honestly like, if like the tier 2 scene, if it had a rehaul, if Blizzard just like took literally 20% of what they put into OWL and they put it into Contenders, and Contenders was good and like flushed out and like nice, then I would probably join a Contenders team.
Yeah, I agree. There's some problems within the tier 2 scene, for sure. But
even just being on the launcher, or you know, not having a Twitch drops enabled during
that's what I
Contenders
mean.
finals and all that.
There's such a large disconnect. Like, why wouldn't the media team be working with Contenders? It's so weird to me. Like, I don't know. If they even just like thought about Contenders as their own, like it would just be so much better, honestly.
Oh, yeah.
So for your stream now, you know, we talked about, you know, if people are interested in coming to watch you, you know, how would you describe, you know, how your stream goes at or your like you said, you say you play main tank a lot. You know, how would you describe the way you play and the way your streams go down?
Yeah, so I joined the game in season 1. I one-tricked Diva to top 500 in the first season. And then I quit in the middle seasons, but I started to come back after I got my computer when I was home from college, and I started to play like Reinhardt, like main tanks a lot. And I think like everybody starts the game of Overwatch out as a one trick, and they kind of like force you to do that. Like they make like a character hero selection game, but they make it so that one tricks are punished in it, which is kind of like a dumb thing in my opinion. But I mean, I started out as a Diva one trick and then a Rhine one trick, and then eventually, after being flamed for being a Rhine one trick, I decided to like actually play like Winston or as a Wrecking Ball, all the tanks. And then after playing all the tanks, I played all the healers, and then after playing all the healers, I played all the DPS except Doomfist. I'm shit at Doomfist. But I would describe my stream as like I have like a couple moods I'm in. I have a mood where I just like play kind of silent and maybe interact with chat once in a while. I have a like mood where I'm just like always interacting with chat even when I'm playing. Like I'll always just like read anything. And then I have a mood where I'll basically just like try hard and like shot call and do everything and have like limited interaction. And it's mainly like I interact with chat when I'm playing because I feel a lot more connected to chat than I do the game most of the time, especially if I'm losing. Like chat is my relief. I see people like, come on, you can do it, winnable, and I'm like, fuck yeah, it is, dude. But I would describe my stream also as slightly innovative. I try to have like things that a lot of other streamers don't do. Like I have a lot of technical knowledge to my advantage. I do a lot of audio mixing. I do a lot of visual stuff. Like I have images loaded on, and I have an Elgato Stream Deck, so I can have like a soundboard. Like I can have people like booing, clapping, and I can have like, you know, somebody dabbing just pop up on screen, and then everybody spams dabs in the chat. So I try to be slightly innovative with my streaming, and eventually I want to make it sort of like a actual video broadcast and with like intro screens and like kind of like its own TV show. I think is eventually what I want to like move towards by the end of the year. And it's great that Florida Mayhem is seeing my vision as well. So
Nice.
Yeah.
That's what I hope most streamers move on to, sort of more of TV style.
yeah, I mean like a lot of streamers are like, hey, I'm just a guy in a room streaming on my computer, and it's like that's totally cool, but
Yeah.
I'm definitely like I want to be professional, you know.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I'm also a sucker for soundboards. I don't know why, but they're just hilarious to me.
Like you just see someone feed and you just put on the laugh track, and
Yeah.
it's always funny.
That's fantastic. Before we get to the last question, moving on from your stream, do you have like a set stream schedule? Do you want to plug or anything like that?
I stream like every day.
Okay,
I mean,
awesome. That's what it's all about.
yeah.
So, get into the last question here. A little bit of a more serious topic. So last week on the show, we talked about the whole Ellie Punisher situation with Second Wind, and I thought it would be interesting to get your perspective, and as a trans bi streamer, because me and Joe are just are white males, so we don't have the perspective that I believe the audience really wants to hear. So I want to know what you thought of the Ellie situations and the effects it might have on female players, and if you've seen any of those effects since it happened.
Oh wow. I might talk a while. I might talk
Yeah.
like
Go for it.
Go right ahead.
basically I found out about Ellie because I heard about like another girl like getting picked up from contenders, and I'm like, yeah, it's like fucking finally, like. And I mean like my only goal really is to like support other women who want to go pro, and I do it because like they need the support. Like any girl who tries to go professional in Overwatch is just like literally bombarded with like harassment, and it's not like that there's like support for them. It's just that there's support and there's harassment. And so like I just try to support as much as I can. And I found out about Ellie, and she followed me um, on Twitter, and also added me on Overwatch. So we like played a couple games together, and I mean, like I heard her voice and everything. So I'm like, okay, like this, how is this like, Punisher with a voice changer?
Yeah.
And like it's later found out that it was just like through a Discord call, which makes sense. But I mean, for me, it's kind of like I feel manipulated almost. Like I feel heavily manipulated by this other person to basically gain my support when they didn't really need it, and they didn't really yeah, they didn't need it. It was all just a fucking like fake. It was fake as hell. And for me, I kind of felt like disgusting after, because it's like, oh wow, like I was really like telling my viewers to like go follow them and like support them, and it's just kind of sad because everybody really wanted a hero, and instead we got a villain.
Yeah.
And I've definitely felt the effects of it. Just yesterday, I got into a 4400 game, so like literally top 100 in the world, or not world, but NA,
Yeah.
of players. And the second I get into game, my name is Annie in game. So people literally on my team, a 3-stack, asked me like, "Oh, are you a boy or a girl?" And I said like, "I don't give a fuck, dude. Just win the game. Like, just play the game.
Yeah.
I don't need this shit right now." And it was especially because of like we're trying to like dive and shit, and I'm trying to do calls, and it's like, "Are you a boy or a girl?" Like, dude, fuck off. I don't care. And he like kept asking me over and over, and he's like, "Oh, I'm sorry, I'm offending you." It's like, you're not offending me. You're just being a fucking douche. Like, shut up. And but then people just like say like, "Oh, it's probably Ellie," like, and I get that like almost like every game. It's just
Wow.
like, it's people just like call me Ellie just because my name is Annie, and if you have a female name in Overwatch, you're Ellie. And people don't really see like anything wrong with it. They're like, haha, it's just banner, but it's like, after getting it every single game, it's like, do you have any fucking other content? Do you have any other
Oh, yeah.
original content? And it's like, you don't. It's just the effects of it isn't like, I'm more annoyed, and it's just because I'm annoyed. Like nobody would have called me Ellie. Oh, it's just Ellie, like. So I mean, the effects of it are clear. There's like, it didn't solve anything. Like the social experiment, that the so-called social experiment, it just made things worse. Like, so
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's like the worst thing that could have happened.
Yeah. Me and Joe both agree with you completely. It's great to get your perspective on it. And that's just annoying. Just, I mean, that's gonna grow on you if everyone's calling you Ellie, everyone's bringing it up. That's just gonna mess with your gameplay and annoy you. I mean, you're getting into game. You're trying to communicate. You're trying to compete. You're trying to win, and they're just bringing up the stuff that doesn't really matter in the end. If you guys are trying to win, so yeah, that
Exactly.
that whole situation just ugly, disgusting. Don't like it at all.
Yeah, it's just like manipulative behavior. Honestly, it's almost like sociopathic,
Yeah, I
especially
completely.
with how complex it was and like crafted it was. It's just very, very weird to me.
Yeah, well, I mean, I immediately jumped to the conclusion that it is a sociopath when they state that it's a social experiment. Like that just immediately
Yeah,
triggers that thought.
just kind of like disregarding anybody's empathy, and yeah.
Yeah. So that's the interview section. But I guess we can get into events now. Thanks so much for answering all those questions, Dan. We'll get
Absolutely.
get right into events. We're at the end of Contenders season 3 for most regions here, and since our last show, the only Contenders region that ended was North America. 2 days ago, Fusion University faced Atlanta Reign in the championship game and ended up beating them 4-2. They kind of went the distance to 7 games because there was a tie in there. But Fusion University wins their third contender season in a row, have yet to drop a game, and they finished off after being down 2-1 in this series going into map 5. They did not let up a single point to Atlanta on Busan, Hollywood, or Dorado. Joe, you're my Fusion man. Does Fusion's dominance just continue into 2019 after these absolutely amazing 3 first seasons for them in contenders?
Yeah, no, it was a crazy match to watch for sure. I mean, like you said, after 4 maps being down 2-1, it looked relatively close. At this series, but then yeah, something clicked. Something clicked for him definitely, and then yeah, Busan, Hollywood, Dorado, boom, 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 real quick maps, real quick points. But yeah, so that's I think I saw they said on Twitter somewhere that Alarm and Elk are now like 24-0 in a row in contenders over 3 seasons. Something ridiculous like that for the support duo, but yeah, just super great match to watch, and yeah, exciting now to see. For this squad, they've had some changes already. They lost Zachary. They lost Who Are You over to Meta Athena between last season and this one. But while some of these Overwatch League moves may be done at least temporarily, but to see now that, because next season is the one that all the academy teams automatically have a slot, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so they're definitely still going on in Contender Season 4. But yeah, it's with this roster with Changsik and Neist, I mean, it's really, really keeping up the tradition. I think that's fair to say.
Oh yeah, it's like you were saying, it's super impressive that this team lost as much talent as they did to Overwatch League, and still just went completely undefeated. And when in those last 3 maps, where they just dominated, did not let up a single point, I was like, well, yeah, this was obviously supposed to happen. I wasn't surprised for some reason. And do you watch contenders? What do you think about Fusion University?
So, Fusion University is, without a doubt, like the best team. Obviously, considering they're champions for 3 seasons in a row. But honestly, I think that Elk and Alarm are probably like the best support duo, and they definitely carried. Like Elk's knowledge of the game is so much deeper than literally like every other player in contenders. And Alarm is like, I'm pretty sure he's post OWL, right? They were in OWL?
Elk is Alarm, Joe?
Not that I know of. Let me see. Yeah, because Elk is signed 2 ways with Fusion for season 2.
I mean, like, regardless, like, they're definitely the best support duo, and they definitely hard carried a lot of games, I think. Elk was kind of like, I guess, the reason that they're undefeated is my take on it, and it's easy to see if you like see his gameplay. He does so much, like, he does so much shot calling and theory crafting with his team that it's insane the stuff that they pull off. He's able to like literally 1v1 anybody in the game, and Alarm and him are just going around assassinating like backlines every game, and I love to see it because like you discord someone and Lucio goes for literally just a one tap and then a boop and it's like dead. Like you can't react to that, and I think it's great because it really like steps up what contenders is, and contenders like running goats for every team, and them getting like hecked on by just like 2 supports is kind of a nice feeling for me as a player, because it's like, hey, hopefully people stop running goats kind of thing, like, and actually counter the people who are carrying, which is not the tanks of the team but the actual supports, and maybe like running dive on the supports instead of trying to go for Changsik, because Changsik is just like, he's just like, if I survive we win kind of.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I looked at Alarm is Elks in on Fusion, but Alarm is not old enough to be in Overwatch League yet.
Oh,
He's 17, so I imagine he would be if he was old enough.
I
They
noticed
are,
like most contenders players are 17 just because I can't get into Owl.
yeah,
Yeah.
and it's almost disappointing when like when I was watching World Cup, it was disappointing when I found out people were under 18 because I was like, I want to see them in the big leagues because it seems like there's so
Yeah.
many young people that are talented enough to be there. So,
There's like 13-year-olds that are in like 4,400 now. It's
oh yeah,
actually insane.
that's crazy.
Talking about Elk's, game sense and whatever. One of the first really good examples I saw of that was actually through Jane that he had maybe a month or so ago. He posted a video of Elk doing a VOD review of like Fusion University versus I want to say like it might have been Second Wind actually or something. Anyway, but up on his YouTube channel, that was super cool to watch because Elk, really just very obviously knew, um, knew what he was talking about, just at whatever the points that he was looking at. It got me interested for more. I think that's that's for sure.
Absolutely.
Okay, and then as far as Contenders Korea goes, that is coming up soon here. I can't remember the exact date, but in the semifinals, Element Mystic ended up 3-0ing Stormquake. Rest in peace, Kaiser, my main man. And then a Runaway at 3-0 WGS. Runaway's dominant season continues. So it's Runaway, Element Mystic in the finals. What do you guys think of this matchup? Who's going to be coming out on top? Does Runaway have it in for the repeat this year?
Well, let's see. First of all, Friday night / Saturday morning at
Okay.
midnight Eastern. So that's what 9 p.m. Friday night on the West Coast. But yeah, I was doing some research into this. People, listeners of the show, I don't, I haven't followed Korean contenders too closely, but I was looking at some of these group stages here from this season. Um, that Runaway finished 5-0 in their group. Element Mystic was 4-1 in theirs. And then, yeah, like you said, in this playoff bracket, it was 2-3-0 wins for both teams to bring into the finals here. But I don't know. I think both, for just a personal preference, just for the interest of it, but also based on just in general what I'm thinking about for these teams that I want to give the edge to Runaway here. And I think the other thing I noticed that was interesting that, like I mentioned, Element Mystic actually went 4-1 in their group stage. And their one loss actually was to Meta Athena, which went 1-4. With
One win.
yeah, exactly, the one win, 3-2, which sort of interestingly happens to be the team that Who Are You is with now is Meta Athena. Um, but so talking about at least numerically, statistically, that's can be seen as a consistency issue. There for Element Mystic, I don't know, but looking at the obviously the history there of Runaway, and that the support that I'm sure they're getting. In fact, the very first match that they took to get to the finals where they are now, they're in the quarterfinals, was another 3-0 against Kongdu Panthera, last year's runner-ups. And again, surely that was a pretty modified roster, but yeah, looking at all that, I think it's probably fair. Give a little bit of edge to Runaway here, but we'll have to see how it goes. Maybe we'll get another nail biter 9-map whatever like we did last season.
That would be awesome, of course. It's been super impressive to see Runaway come out this dominant after losing their entire roster. And who do you think has this one?
Me? Runaway, yeah.
Anne.
Oh,
Oh,
I also haven't really been following Korea, but I mean, I would assume Runaway, just because usually dominant forces stay dominant. Um, just because it's not like when they're off season, they're gonna like degrade their, attitude or gameplay styles. They're probably just gonna develop them even further and try to outplay anybody who tries to like scout them.
Yeah.
Which kind of makes sense for like Fusion University too. Like sometimes they were literally just able to predict the other team because they're like, we know you're gonna do this because you probably scouted us, kind of thing. So
Yeah. Yeah, that's pretty cool. I'm definitely going. I'm going Runaway too. I don't think we're getting 9 maps though. That would be crazy if we got that once again. Moving into the news, we're sticking heavily contenders this week. We only have one piece of news, and it's honestly a piece of news I could talk about for a while because I'm confused by the move here, and it's that XL2. They're looking for New York native players for this first 2019 season, which has turned out that they're kind of disregarding their current roster, which is a great roster. I think who was the player that said they were looking for Team Mangachu?
I think all of them are.
Yeah, I mean all of
them
the
now.
Like
non-Koreans.
Clone Man is looking for Team 2, and he's like probably like the most insane Reinhardt.
Yeah, this is just an absolute stunning move to me. What do you is this ever going to pay off for XL2 in the long run? Is this some people are saying it's Blizzard's fault with their new rules in Contender Season 3. We'll start with you, Anne. What are your thoughts on this decision by XL2, who's been one of the best Contenders teams too?
Hey, exactly. Like they definitely were one of the best Contenders teams, and it's sad to see, but it also makes sense to me, who understands that Contenders isn't really going very far. It's like literally the only point of Contenders is like maybe for a team to scout them, but even then World Cup is like sometimes better.
Yeah.
And like I think New York just doesn't want to devote money into that scene anymore, and they've done that by essentially just getting rid of their roster and instead, having people in New York who they don't need to buy housing for. They don't need to like really do much because they're in the city, kind of thing. And they no longer have to pay like Mangachu or Clone Man. And it's like sad to see, but it makes sense. It's just very sad to see.
Yeah.
And I do slightly agree that it is partly Blizzard's fault and not supporting the tier 2 scene, because if they supported the tier 2 scene, then the issue of paying players and having good players on the team wouldn't be an issue.
Yeah, I agree there. I don't know. It seems like XL2 doesn't want to even be in Contenders with this move, kind of. I don't know.
They're just saying, hey, let's make it a fun thing,
Yeah.
like just get people from the city.
Yeah, they're just
It's a super utilitarian sort of thing that people talking about that that at this point XL2 exists to house these New York players that are now coming on, or to feed MYXL, and like there's no other sort of alternative that to have these players that like Mangachu, like Cloman, that obviously doing super well on this team, but realistically aren't going to be going up to replace Mono or like Pine or somebody in the future. That's going to be on the one hand, yeah, save the resources because you're not getting any to come in with that and try to do your own thing. Yeah, it's a weird perspective.
I think
that's honestly the saddest thing, though, is like, because I think they got Mangachu and they got Clone Man with the intent of, hey, we want a good team, but we don't want to move them up to OWL because we already have a good team. Like,
yeah.
And I think that's kind of sad because that's exactly what's going to happen with the New Yorkers. I doubt even like one New Yorker on their team is going to make it to OWL
Yeah, I mean that's
just because they don't plan on having them move up. And it's kind of like a sad thing because like the whole point of people going into contenders is so that they can go into OWL 100% of the time.
and I think
It's the path to pro.
yeah, I think that's Blizzard's view too, is that maybe well Blizzard obviously would not like to waste money where they can, but I feel like they went into contenders saying that they're treating it like almost a baseball, like MLB farm system, where obviously no one watches like minor league baseball too often, but it's there for these professional teams to have like a farm system and eventually be able to pull them up. And New York was, and in the offseason, New York was utilizing that. Two players, right, brought up from their contenders team in the offseason. They utilized it as much as the teams that did the most in the offseason. So it's very interesting that they've decided to maybe drop that strategy. And I mean, they have, I don't blame them for it. They have obviously one of the best rosters in Overwatch League, so they don't need it that much, but it would be nice to, I think Blizzard wants to utilize contenders as like, these are the players that are so young they can't be in Overwatch League yet, that you're just keeping like under your name so you can eventually pick them up, or they're just the players that need a little bit more fine tuning before you bring them up to the majors.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so that's anything else to say about the situation from either of you guys?
It's going to be weird, looking at their roster next season, in this sort of new shaped contender structure already. That, yeah, I don't know.
And yeah, it's just I don't really have high expectations for the team anymore.
I don't think anyone really does. I've already seen Slasher tweeting about how he's going to join up, which would be hilarious. So we now move into our season 2 preview. If you haven't been listening, we've been previewing season 2 week by week. We've been doing about 2 teams per week. Some weeks we did 3 because we unfortunately missed a week. But we just been going team by team, giving the team an off-season grade based off the moves they have made in the off-season. Did they improve their team? Did they not? We predict who we think their standout player is going to be. We give you some anticipated matchups or storylines for this 2019 season, and then we finish it off by comparing what we think their finish will be in season 2 to season 1. Will they place better, the same, or worse? So far we have done Shanghai Dragons, Vancouver, Dallas, Chengdu, Hangzhou, San Francisco, Houston, London, Atlanta, Boston, Philadelphia, and New York. So if that's one of your favorite teams, go back to our old episodes and listen to one of those. We have which teams we do in the description each week, so you can easily find it. But this week, we've got two returners from season 1. We'll start off with the Pacific's Los Angeles Valiant, a team that did pretty well last year. Joe, I'll start out with you. Based off the roster moves they have made in the offseason, what offseason grade would you give them?
Yeah, so LA Valiant kind of pulled a San Francisco shock in the offseason. I think it's fair to say, and by that I mean, dropping some of the excess from their roster that they had. Doing some quick math, yeah, they ended season 1 with 12 players, and they're down to 9 now after dropping Nunlocked, Virgo, and Finzi, and also traded soon to the Paris Eternal. But then in the offseason, they also picked up Kuki, main tank player formerly of Seoul Dynasty. Again, bringing that up to 9 now. But so it's sort of interesting roster here that we've got Fate and Kuki, as well as Space Izayaki, sort of on this tank slash flex sort of role. And then Agility's Bunny and KSF for DPS, left with Custa and Kariv, potentially as a support duo there. But yeah, I don't know. It's a sort of interesting thing that obviously the loss of Soon in the DPS, that's a big significant change that they made. He was um, really a powerhouse for Ellie Valiant in season one. And so not doing much to replace that in terms of the lineup. So really, um, LA Valiant, putting some significance and putting some expectations onto Agilities and Bunny and KSF, who didn't see as much of in season one, KSF in particular, but to see how they're able to come in and and try to fill in that spot. Clearly, there's some confidence put on them there, but I really like this tank line. Conversely, with like I said, Fate and Kuki and Space in particular on the off tank position, that's going to be really it's going to be one of their strengths, I think, for sure. Um, but yeah, so in a like we've talked about with some other teams, in a meta that might not have so many DPS players in it, there are worse things definitely for this team. Um, but you've got to hope, you've got to assume if you're an LA Valiant player that they've got some internal confidence going on, definitely, with this lineup that they got, especially after the loss of Soon. So yeah, if I was going to grade it, I don't know. Well, I'd give them maybe a B minus or a B, I think. Which it's just a matter of expectations that they could improve that easily in their first couple matches of the season. But just because we're not exactly sure where they've sort of left themselves.
Yeah. How about you, Anne? What do you take from them losing Soon? Is that a big enough? Does that do big enough damage to their DPS line that it's just not that good anymore? Can Agility's Bunny and KSF hold their own?
I've played like ranked. I don't really read up too much on the news, or I mean, like on the off season. So, you guys probably have a lot more insight. But I guess my insight is I've played with KSF Bunny and Agilities, and I think Agilities is a really, really well-rounded player, and I think Bunny is a really, really good Widowmaker. I'm not sure how that's gonna go though, especially with like kind of a goats meta. I don't think that's necessarily going to go away with the armor nerfs. However, I would like to see it go away with the armor nerfs, but because I mean, like, why play a game if you can't even play DPS heroes when they're half the roster,
Yeah.
But I think we will see double sniper in OWL, and so I think Bunny can hold his own. I think Bunny is a very, very good Widowmaker, and pretty much every team has picked up a Widowmaker. Like, Atlanta just picked up Defran, and he's been really, really practicing. And, Florida Mayhem has Saya player playing Widowmaker, so I do think Widowmaker is going to be a big part of OWL matches. And I would like to see like a Genji, and I already know we're going to see McCree because Fan the Hammer's busted. So
Yeah, I'm glad we'll be able to get to see McCree again. I like McCree a lot. But yeah, I agree with you. I don't think the loss of Soon is that big of a deal for Los Angeles Valiant. I think they already had a super well-rounded team. I mean, obviously, Soon probably the most popular player on this team as far as fans go. But yeah, I think losing him not too big of a deal, especially in the Goats meta. But the addition of Kuki's pretty big too. Getting him from Soul Dynasty, since Soul got Fissure in the offseason, they don't really need Kuki too much anymore. So that's a nice little backup there for Fate. So. I'll give their off-season grade like a B. I mean, they didn't do too much. I can't reward them too much. Joe, who do you think But I mean, their standout player before was obviously Soon. Everyone talked about him. Who do you think steps up in that place this season?
Well, if we're talking about DPS players, it's definitely going to have to be, somebody like Agilities, and obviously, we saw how well he played on Team Canada here in the World Cup. Um, he's obviously a really good DPS player, but yeah, to be able to sort of restructure that going into it. Would I say anybody else? Yeah, no, I think Agility is probably is who I'll be watching here for LA Valiant.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with Agilities there. I think Bunny stepping up too in those sniper battles would be absolutely huge for them. But I always like looking at Fate. I like looking at Space. I like looking at their sort of tanky players because I think that's been Valiant's bread and butter. Kind of they have a good tank line. They have a consistent tank sort of support line there for them. As far as anticipated matchups go, Joe, who you looking forward to them playing the most?
Well, I mean, we've talked about all these California teams that Shock might actually be good this season, and so that's going to be exciting to watch. LA Valiant versus Shock, and then probably the other one I point out definitely is going to be Paris again because we've got soon there, but also just in general to see how this Paris team can stand up against one of the better teams from Overwatch League Season 1, right? I think I'm on the record somewhere saying that I'm really interested to see how Paris can make it through with this sort of EU roster that they've decided to go with. But yeah, those would probably be my two picks.
Yeah. And any other anticipated matchups you can think of for the Valiant?
Yeah. I'm just excited for like any game, honestly.
They could be playing anybody.
Yeah, literally anybody.
February 14th can't get here soon enough.
Yeah.
30 days actually from
I'm
today.
excited. I'm excited to see Fate play too, because I played against him in a ranked match and he flank shattered me twice, and I feel bad. So I really want to see him flank shatter somebody else, so I feel good again.
Flank shatters are the best. So it's not you really want to see it. So it's not only you. You're not the only one getting flank shattered here. But yeah, that's what a long off season does. It gets you pumped for almost anything to be on that Overwatch League Twitch page. It could be any team playing each other. And other anticipated matchups. I should talk about it too. Gladiators, LA. That's no doubt. I'm looking forward to that. Again, those were always the most hype, especially since it's in LA. And you got both teams playing. The whole crowd's going crazy. And seeing that out on LA Live in Stage 4 is going to be awesome. I think that's the last week of the season too. So that's going to be cool. Joe, compared to Season 1, LA Valiant, they finished pretty high. They made the playoffs last season. So with all these added teams, it's going to be hard to stay consistent, especially with they didn't make too many off-season moves, but they had a good base to start. Do you think they will be doing better, the same, or worse in 2019?
Yeah, I was going back to look at this. Obviously finished number 2 seed overall, but they had a really not good stage 2. Finished 8th in stage 2. Despite making playoffs both in stage 3 and stage 4. It was sort of a roller coaster for LA Valiant fans in season 1. But are they going to be able to pull against these 8 new teams? Yeah, I think they're absolutely a top half team. I think that's fair to say. They've they had a pretty pretty big a target on their back almost by the end of the season. Calling them the best Western team in the league. I think that could be true. It's fair to say going into season 2, but again, it's just a matter of what the expectations are for this roster and whether they can, step into that and actually fill it, the way they're going to need to.
Yeah, that's pretty crazy. I did not even remember that LA Valiant, they won the Pacific Division, which is pretty crazy. But yeah, what do you think? Do you think they do better? I mean, they finished second overall, so it's it's hard to do as good as that, especially with all the talent coming into the league, right?
Sorry, what?
Oh, how do you think LA Valiant will be doing as well as they did last year, which was second place overall with all the new teams coming in, with all the new roster changes? I mean, LA Valiant barely even changed their roster and lost one of their best players. Can they keep it up again this year?
That's interesting because, like, honestly, with all the expansion teams coming in, I'm kind of scared for them. I do think like the OWL teams that are already established are probably going to perform like marginally better than the new teams coming in, just because they have the advantage of coaching for like, like 2 years and beyond, and then these new expansion teams are only being coached for like 3 months beforehand, and like, yeah, they can get good players, but I think they might be at a disadvantage coaching wise, and coaching really does win games.
Yeah, I agree with you there. I think Valiant has the potential to be as good as they were last year. Finishing second probably maybe a little bit on the higher side, but I think they'll stay about where they are in the Pacific Division, being up top and competing for that first place, even with Fuel revamping their roster and looking good in stage 4, with the Shock adding some great players, Soul adding some great players. I think Valiant can still compete. And now we move on to our second team, which is very fitting for our guest today. We're previewing the Florida Mayhem, who didn't do too well last season, unfortunately. Finishing second to last overall in the league at 7-33. Here in the off season, they made complete changes, brand new roster besides awesome guy Tavik and Saya player. Joe, what do you think of the Florida Mayhem's off season?
So, so it's those of you who've been listening, for several weeks now know, I don't even know when it was, in October or November or something, when Florida announced that they were dropping essentially all of their Nordic roster. Swoosh, Logix, Zupe, Zepasai, Zappis, and Manitin. And we were, I think both of us were a little shocked just at that choice, leaving then awesome guy, Saya player, and Tuvik in the lineup still. And it's, and since then they've gone making the move towards essentially a majority Korean roster, not quite all Korean, but adding Swan, the tank position, as well as Apply from Mayhem Academy and BQB for DPS, and Hagapen, who's been back and forth on, I think, at least 2 Overwatch League teams so far, and Chris on the support role, and then Zephyr from Soul Dynasty. But so yeah, interesting choices. I mean, we talked at the time. Why did they cut Logix? We know Swoosh now actually is coaching Team Giganti, which just won the EU Contenders title for Season 3. But lots of these other teams, or lots of these other players, are now having their own success in Contenders and elsewhere. But to actually look at the roster they have now, 9 players. We've talked about how good Saya player is already, even this week. But I don't know. It's an interesting sort of combination they've got going there. Clearly, I think Florida has like a new GM or something, I want to say, this season. Um, who's sort of taking this in a different direction. But yeah, to see um, to see if being able to pull the Korean roster to try to pull a New York, try to pull a London, is that the way to go? It's hard to say. But we're going to find out. There's not much in that sense that can be done uh, to get much of a worse results, I think, than season one. It's unfortunately it's just how it is for Florida. But yeah, I don't know. Do I think this is a top 10 team? No. Do I think this is a top 15 team? Maybe. Give it a week or two. I'll be able to give you a definite answer. But I mean, it's I don't know. I think to lose the consistent core that they had completely, I think that's a little cause for concern. But clearly the management is confident enough in what they're doing with this. Again, essentially a complete roster rework for season two. But yeah, so what do I grade them? I mean, I personally don't like it. But yeah, so it's I don't know. It's probably a little bit less than LA Valiant. So I don't know. Give them a C plus, something like that.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that they did need to flip these players. I think that they needed to bring in some new faces here, which they have done almost fully. I don't know if I'm personally too impressed with those faces they brought in. I think Hagopen is okay and Zephyr's okay. I mean, they chose those two players that we're already familiar with, but I almost would have rather them went for some new talent from contenders that everyone really wanted on the team, instead of these two players who, I mean, they weren't the most impressive players in season one. That's why they're moving around all over the place, and Zephyr obviously being part of that disappointing Seoul Dynasty team as well. So I'm not too impressed with the players they picked up. Keeping Psy player was an obvious to me, and just still having Tavik there and awesome guys is fine with me as well. But overall, I'd give it like a C plus probably. I'm not that impressed with what the Florida Mayhem brought this off season. Any standout players for you, Joe, in 2019? Anyone you're looking forward to playing? Maybe new on this roster, newly added.
Or maybe if we've missed something, I mean, do you have any insight for us, and on what might have been happening?
Yeah, I actually went back and I watched most of the games of Florida Mayhem just because I didn't even see any of OWL season 2. I missed it. I started streaming in January or something last year, and I didn't really watch any of it. But I mean, I went back and I watched it, and I noticed there was a huge disconnect between the tanks and the supports, and that was 100% of the reason they would always lose, is because I'm pretty sure Seawush it probably isn't his fault, but he would dive a target and his diva wouldn't follow, and then the Mercy would follow the Winston because he would get chunked, and then the Mercy would die and get dove, and the Mercy in a Mercy meta, dying first means an instant loss. And I noticed that happen at least a couple times every game. The Mercy would just die first because she would follow Seawush, and it was because Seawush was obviously going to die without the diva support. And I'm honestly kind of glad they redid their team, because there was a lot of disconnects. I don't know if it was language, I don't know what it was, but it was definitely something.
Well, hopefully it wasn't language, because now they still have that issue around their team.
Yeah, they might have that issue still, but
yes, standout players, Joe.
Yeah, so like I said, looking at Florida now, it's a very different Florida than what we saw before. And I think uh, it's also interesting. Yeah, out of 9 players, they've got 4 DPS players signed. That's actually a trend we've seen in several teams now that to have lots of options, I think more than anything is what they're looking at. But yeah, I think partly for that reason that I'm more interested in watching uh, the rest of the squad, the tanks and supports, to see how they're going to be able to enable people like Saya Player until they can apply uh, to put them in situations where they can be successful. Because we saw Saya Player clearly can be successful. Um, and, lots of these other players can be too. Um, but yeah, so I want to see. What do I want to see? I want to see like Awesome Guy Zephyr. I want to see how that is able to develop. Yeah, I don't know. Um, yeah, it's for some combination of the tanks and supports, I think, for me.
Yeah. How about you? And have you played with any of these guys on ladder? Does any names stand out to you? Um, Specifically, maybe out of the new names they added.
Who are the new names,
So they
if
got
you know?
Swan from Energy Esports, and in contenders they got Apply from their own academy team, BQB from Korean contenders, Hagopin, who was floating around Overwatch League last year, Chris from Meta Athena in Korea, and then Zephyr, who was on Seoul Dynasty.
I've played with Apply, and I have um I think I played with another player, but um I mean like I hope Apply like really performs. Even though he got banned for 2 games, I played with him and he's very, very, very shot caller, PMA, and like even if we just get completely steamrolled, he'll be like, okay, we can still win this. Like we just have to, organize. And I think that attitude goes really far. Like imagine being like 2-0'd and then giving up. Like I think that's worse for teams because it's totally possible in this game to like literally 3-0 them back. Like
Yeah.
it's totally possible,
Oh yeah.
which is kind of the nice part of this game is it's not really um anybody's game until they win.
Yeah. That's what I find so entertaining about it too. If I'm watching it, if there's a 3-0 and it was dominant, I'm like, well, it's definitely not over yet. This game's still up for grabs. But I totally think Apply could succeed. I think Florida had some pretty strong DPS, specifically Saya Player, and it's hard not to choose Saya Player as my standout player because I am impressed with him uh, as a player completely. So I'm just gonna go with Saya Player again. He would be my standout player last year. I'll choose him to be that once again in 2019. Any anticipated matchups you got for the Florida Mayhem, Joe? I know they weren't too competitive last year, but and they didn't build up too many rivalries because of it. But is there anyone you're looking forward to seeing them play?
Hmm. I mean, if we're talking about players that uh, players with history, I mean, we look at Zephyr coming from Soul Dynasty and that sort of thing. Um, but I think also it'll be notable. I think whenever it happens that Florida and Shanghai play their one match of the season. Again, it's just thinking about from season one history that we're expecting Shanghai to be a much better team uh, this season than last, and so to be able to make that connection and see, uh, I don't know what stage it'll happen at, but the way that it's definitely going to be a really different picture season two compared to season one. No matter what it is, but yeah.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think looking at some other matchups, maybe the first matchup against Atlanta with DeFran versus McDonald's, maybe Zephyr going up against Seoul Dynasty again. Florida didn't really make any rivals in season one, or just because of how poor they did. I don't think anyone was anticipating too many of their matchups. So it should be interesting this season. So to finish it off, I mean, Florida, I think everyone in their power rankings I've seen so far, they're thinking the same position for Florida. They're thinking like second to last ish, not doing too well. And I know you might be biased since this is the people who have signed you. But do you think people are underestimating this new Florida roster? Do you think they can do better than they did last season?
There's no way to tell because I don't know the players, but I'm really hoping. Otherwise, I'm gonna join the team and carry them.
You heard it here first.
Yeah,
That's what I
yeah.
was gonna say. I think if they're doing poorly again, they bring Ann up to the main roster. Honestly, um, yeah, Joe, what do you think about this Florida roster? Do they have it in them to place better than second to last this season?
Yeah, so I think I mentioned this last week. I forget for what team, but is it that my placings tend to be generous, I think, but uh, it'll be a bit more telling once we actually do our full 20 team rundown here eventually. But yeah, I think unfortunately I am going to have to put them in the bottom quarter definitely of teams with rosters like Chengdu or Washington, um, which unfortunately is just what we're looking at. But again, I sort of always preface this. I absolutely invite them to prove me wrong, and we'll have a good season out of it.
Yeah, I agree with you there. I think they are bottom quarter. Unfortunately, it's kind of sad that they're like I feel they're the only like inaugural season team that's sitting there with all the new expansion teams at the bottom of most people's power rankings, which is it's sad. I feel like people are maybe underestimating them a little bit because they have the infrastructure there as far as coaching and the whole organization goes. So it's kind of sad that everyone's predicting them to do that poorly, but I think they'll do a little bit better. I don't think they're going to get second to last. I don't think they're going to make playoffs or finish in the top half, but I think there are a good amount of expansion teams that are worse than this team. So
Yeah, that's my take as well. Is like the expansion teams are probably going to be on average like lower ranked.
yeah, it's kind of I think there are a lot of people overranking a lot of the expansion teams so far, um, because
It's just because there's a lot of favorites on the new teams.
and
But
hype,
I
yeah,
mean,
some
what
hype
can you do?
around some players, and yeah, I think if anything, the expansion teams might start out pretty poorly, and then eventually, once they get used to it, get a lot better. But that still doesn't mean top place finishes because of, I mean, a poor first half. So that's it for this week's episode. Thank you so much for joining us. In before we go, do you want to plug your social media one more time?
Yeah, so you can follow me on Twitch at AnneDro, or you can follow me on Twitter, YouTube, Instagram at AnneDro Media. And yeah, I hope you see you around.
Yeah. Thank you. Thanks so much for joining us. And if you guys didn't know, now you can follow our personal social medias at JWGeorgeIV, and Joe's is at Kirkpatrick_Inc. The show's is at On The Flank Show. We have an email, ontheflankshow@gmail.com. You can either tweet at us or email us if you have any topics you'd like us to talk about. Of course, you're listening to this in some way, but if you want to listen to it in a different way, we are on ontheflank.podbean.com, my personal YouTube channel, which is John George. You could most likely find that on my Twitter page, iTunes and Apple Podcasts. If you're an iPhone user and an Android user, we're on Spotify and Google Play. Thank you guys for listening. Thanks once again to Anne for joining us, and we'll check you guys out next week.